Okay, so we are going to send a replay out. This is as good as it gets on how I'm going to be able to arrange the screen. So we're both pinned. Hopefully that works. But we're just going to go ahead and get started. Let people come in as they may. And Lindsay is a total expert at this, so I'm just going to let her take it. And here we go. It's launch day for Freely Sober. Thank you for being here.
Okay, and so you'll be admitting people as they come in. You'll see when they
Yeah,
want
I
to come
can see
in.
them, so I'll just admit them as I see them.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm so excited to be here. I am Lindsay, Erica's sister, and I will start this by saying when I started my podcast in 2016, she was like my biggest cheerleader and helper and supporter in chasing that dream myself. So, we are definitely both entrepreneurs that this all kind of, I would say, we could give credit to our dad for that because he's an entrepreneur himself. And so, anyway, I'm excited to be here supporting Erica. It's always such an honor to do that and support people who are chasing their own dreams. So, first of all, third book, congratulations, Freely Sober.
Thank you. And yeah, and I've been on your podcast for all of my books. So thank you.
It's the craziest thing about writing a book to me is that you come up with the idea and you start writing and, like brainstorming it years before it's ever going to be in the hands of the reader. And I think for me, as an Enneagram 7, that would drive me nuts because once I have an idea of something I want to do, I want everybody to know about it and I want to go do it immediately. So let's start this conversation with that. Like when you have a really good idea for a book, something you care a lot about, how do you kind of like control that excitement and really just get started?
Well, I think I'm not a seven, although I have Enneagram seven tendencies. I'm a four creative. But I know I am like you too, because um I like to write stuff and just publish it right away, which is why I have a Substack. So I love being able to do that in other forms. But I think with the books, like starting with my first book, it was like just trying to figure this process out, lifelong dream. And so I knew from the start, as soon as I started investigating, this is going to take a long time, and you just kind of have to accept that. And so when I started working on the second one and this third one, it's just kind of like you just have to know like this is going to take at least 2 years basically to write it, to publish it, and all of those things. Now it can be faster if you are self-publishing and you're kind of on a fast track. But honestly, I wish I would have had more time with this book because I could have made it better. But eventually, you have to stop, like, because you could edit till forever, and you just have to stop at some point. So anyways, yeah, that's just you kind of accept that, and then and have that more immediate gratification in other places, which I do all the time. Which is I love sending my emails, I love writing on my Substack and doing social media. So I have all of that pretty much over there.
Well, how do you decide what stays like close to the vest for the book? Because it's like when you have a good idea for the book, I imagine you're like, "Oh, I could write a Substack real quick or I could write an Instagram post real quick." But some things you're like, "I have to keep this for the book so that there are surprises in the book or interesting things people haven't already read that I have written in the book."
Well, that is actually sort of a myth because you I my one of my number one pieces of advice to my writers that I coach is never save your writing because
Mm.
whatever you write today about subject ABC, by the time that gets into a book, if you say you want to write about the same thing in the chapter of a book, by the time you get there to putting it in the chapter of the book, like you are going to write it differently. And you are like writing is really alive. It's really your experiences, time passing, things that happen in the world are actually going to change your words, how you think about things, and how you write things. And so, no matter if you read it 2015, your book comes out in 2018, you're going to write it differently in 2018 than you did in 2015 because you're really a different person by the time you do that. And the other thing about just going ahead and putting it out there is that you're improving not only your writing, but you're also improving you are getting feedback on the idea. The more you write about something, the deeper you go into it, the more thoughtfully you can think about it and express it. And so I mean, I say do never save your writing. If you have an idea, write about it, get it out there. You'll fix it, improve it, change it, all those things later. And you never know where it will lead once you get it on paper.
Okay, great. So all the things in my notes app. that I am thinking about writing, I should just go ahead and put out into
Yes.
the world.
Yeah, because you don't know if you'll ever write or actually, who knows if you'll get to the book. I mean, I 100% think you can, and we'll be glad to help you do that. But it's like if you save it, who knows? Like, and sometimes the thought is just like it's for that moment in time, And so all the things that you read in my book that are new, but a lot of those iterations were thoughts that started a long time ago that I've written other places. Plus, people don't read everything you write. So,
Right.
don't have to worry about that.
Well, they don't remember it like you
They don't
remember
read it,
it.
they don't remember it. Yeah, and that's the other thing is you want to say something many times for someone to actually really embrace that and retain that. It's you kind of end up doing that anyway.
Yeah, it's like advertising. You got to hear
It
it at
is.
least 6 times for
Exactly.
sure. Okay, so this is your third book, and I'm curious, maybe if people are here, if they want to put it in the comments, you can type if people are more here for the writing topic or the topic of the book. Like
Oh,
the topic,
interesting.
yeah, right? Like, are you more interested in learning how to write books? Are you more interested in like this topic specifically of this book, which is Freely Sober? Um, so we talked about the writing a little bit, but we'll jump into the topic of the book. It's been over 5 years since you decided to give up alcohol. Okay. LJ says both. Love it. Thank you for sharing. So it's been over 5 years since you gave up alcohol. And I wonder in that process, your 5 year journey there, at what point were you like, I definitely have to write a book about this?
Mm. Well, I knew when I first started trying to quit drinking, I was sort of like very lightly treading on sharing that with people on social media. I wasn't very open about it at first because it was like, well, am I even really going to do this? But the further I got into it, even when I was not fully adhering to it all the way, I felt that it was very empowering and it was, in a way, accountability. And also just like moving into that identity of someone that doesn't drink, it was helpful for me to put it out there. That's not for everyone, but that's what I did. And so once I actually hit, say, 6 months or I'm getting to a year, it was probably about at a year where I was like, well, what am I doing with this story? What, and as a writer, like I just write. That's what I do. That's what I was made to do. And so I started by trying to write for magazines and newspapers about this because I was like, well, if it's going to go anywhere, it's going to start here. And so the biggest thing there that launched it was 3 years ago, I wrote an article for the New York Times on American women and the trend of drinking. And I was able to incorporate a little bit of my story into that. And I think it was pretty much from there that I was like, okay, like I'm on this pathway now to write this book. And I never know how it's going to happen. I am not Elizabeth Gilbert. I am not um Colleen Hoover. I don't sell millions of books. People are not storming in to see me. And so when I write a new book, it's like, well, I don't know if it's going to get a publisher. I don't know if it's going to get, picked up. But I was like, but it doesn't matter because as a writer and as a creative and as this is a calling, I'm going to write it. And I don't care if I have to self-publish it. That's totally fine. And so I just kind of started moving towards that, which starts with a book proposal. And in writing the book proposal, you start to gather the ideas for what do you want the chapters to be? What do you want the point of this to be? What are all the details that goes into it? And so I just sort of slowly started making those steps without trying to rush, without having expectations, and then all the while living out the experience of time going by and staying sober
Mm.
and staying in my communities and learning all the things that I would eventually pass on in the book. And so yeah, it was sort of almost like a foregone conclusion by that time.
Okay, I this is an interesting thing that I hadn't thought about until now when you said that. Like staying sober this whole time. Wow, that is a bit of a big pressure to be committed to this lifestyle, knowing you're writing a book about it. Like, it's like that old DC Talk song. What if I stumble? What if I fall? But
DC
seriously,
talk.
like if you are writing about this big lifestyle change that you've made, and there's temptation along the way. I know that you've kind of like been able to weed out that noise at this point. You've been in the game for so long, and you were not the kind of like person who was like, shaken if they didn't get alcohol or anything like that. But like, did you feel the pressures of that? Like, okay, now that I've made this like part of my identity and my story and I'm writing a book about it, I really got to stick to this no alcohol thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wouldn't have been smart to start the process before a year had gone by. I mean,
Mm.
hitting a year was such a huge milestone for me because I had gone 6 months prior to that and then went back to drinking. So I was like, if I can get a year, and I think, the more time goes by, the more strength you have with it, like the more confident you feel and able to keep going. It is a little scary sometimes because you'll hear people like I'm in a bunch of Facebook groups and all of this. You'll see I was sober for 7 years and I thought it would be okay and I started drinking again. And like when I see that kind of stuff, I'm like, 7 years? How did you know? Why did you do that? And so I think it's good to be vigilant and be like, you do have to protect that part of yourself and realize that anyone is susceptible to falling down again. So I think there was some of that pressure and maybe having the book and starting to have an audience on this was helpful to me. Maybe I shouldn't have needed that, but maybe it was helpful to me to be like, well, I can't fall back on this now. But at the same time, I think struggle and falling down and getting back up is so relatable that I think had that happened, I still would have continued on because had that happened, I don't think I would have stayed there very long. I think it would have been and pretty quickly. I would have been like, yeah, that was stupid. And in doing that, I think almost would have made it more relatable, more understandable. And I've I've read books from people that have been in that situation where they wrote the
Yeah.
book and then they had something happen afterwards and then they went back to it. But it's like really life is kind of like that. Like I remember in the beginning, or one of the thoughts that was really helpful to me was, okay, like this is going to be hard, whether you're drinking and like dealing with all the mindset and the guilt and the shame and the not feeling well and like the rules. That's hard. It's also going to be hard if you're not drinking and to stay away from it. But like, sorry, my dog. But like, which hard is better? Which hard leads to life and flourishing? And that was very helpful to me to be like, both are hard, but one of them actually has a good ending, and one of them just is a continual cycle of struggle. So,
Yeah. Okay, so to share in order to share the story well, you have to like share some pretty personal things that I imagine can feel like embarrassing and shameful, and especially like mom and dad and aunts and uncles and just people. And I mean, I just as reading it as your sister, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's sharing these things. But it's important because it's part of the story. How do you decide how much is too much, how much to share, and how do you like look mom in the eye and not feel like I don't know, shameful about it?
um, I think I don't know. I mean, I think when it comes to sharing specifics, it's like the specifics are what speak to people. The specifics are where people see themselves. If you're vague, it's just I don't want to say it's not as interesting. That's not really the point,
It's
but
a tease.
right. And it's also like you're trying to make people see like the real experience, almost like I mean, I guess I'm writing when I write these things. So it's like writing the experience, like as a writer, like I'm just like drawn to being visceral about what I experienced and what happened and what I did. And also to make it not to normalize it as a good thing, but to normalize it as a thing. So that people, because many people, might not realize like, hey, like and even someone like Erica did this, people would not know those things about me had did I would were I not to have shared them, things that I shared about things I've done when I was drinking. And the all the while being at church, leading the Bible study, going on mission trips, like that doesn't mean my faith wasn't important to me or didn't matter, but also I think it helps people realize that like maybe they see themselves in me, maybe they were too ashamed to get help or admit it, but they see that I've done that, and maybe then they say, oh, okay, well, she shared it, It's okay. I can share it. And also, I like to remind people that this problem of having to struggle with alcohol is not any more shameful than any other problem. It's just, I mean, not to be cliche, but it's just the way, one other way that people deal with the brokenness of their lives and the brokenness of this world. And so you are not any worse than someone who does it in another way, like struggling with depression or a different substance or whatever it is that you go to as a numbing mechanism. Like in the end, like we're really just trying to survive and trying to find something better, find a better pathway, a better feeling. It's not done out of like some uh sort of like sinful desire to be a this certain kind of person. It's just like we're dealing with life and life can be hard. And um, until we find another solution, you know, we're doing the best that we can until we can do better. And that's, I just want that to be known. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, most people that are struggling with some sort of like reliance on alcohol, it is a numbing mechanism. It is like, ooh, I'm gonna feel good right now in this moment, and I'm gonna take it all away, and it's gonna feel great for these next 2 hours. And you have to decide, like, are those 2 hours worth it?
and it's weird because alcohol, I mean, it's not like I look back at every memory and it's like, oh, this was horrible. It's like I have
Yeah.
lots of fun memories. I have lots of good times. Like, and that's why it's confusing because you're like, well, it's good here, but bad here. And you don't have to throw away all those memories and say it was this awful thing. There is good and bad, but also something I like to point out is that we have so many parts of life are just integrated with alcohol,
Yeah.
celebration, sadness, parties, weddings, vacations, concerts, all these fun things that we do in life, starting from, when we're young people and when we start drinking. And so we think that the alcohol is like such a pivotal and important part of those things because it was there. But actually, it's not necessarily true, and so we have to learn to like separate that out and be like, wait, was that only fun? Was that fun and like special because I was drinking, or was it fun and special because of what I was doing and who I was with and what was happening? And sometimes, it's you can't tell, but a lot of times I think we just don't realize that it wasn't really about that at all.
I do feel like it. I mean, you first came to me, gosh, I mean, it had to be like 7 years ago when you had read that Annie Grace's Naked Mind. And
Mind.
I remember listening to her on a podcast on the treadmill at the Ursay YMCA. And so, but my point is like that was so long ago. So do you think that there really has been like a big shift in how our culture is thinking about alcohol?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when I first, probably the first time I like looked up something about sobriety or trying to stop drinking was probably in like, I don't know, maybe 2012, um,
Wow.
something like that. I remember maybe 2000, maybe earlier, because I remember it searching like being like AA meetings and being like, I would never actually go. I'm just looking.
But
Um,
have you been?
what?
But have you been?
I did go to some AA meetings before COVID because that was like when I just started really doing this seriously, but then COVID happened, so I didn't go back to them. I do find them very intimidating. I would still find them intimidating because you're going to a new place, you're like finding a room with no sign on it and walking in with a bunch of strangers, and then you're like, do I have to say I'm an alcoholic? I still don't even know the answer to that question. I would still go. I would definitely, and I would still go if a friend wanted me to go, for example. But
Mm.
um I where was I going with this whole topic? Yes. So I never did go back then. I did actually, that's a lie. I went one time and it was I did not like it. It was so intimidating and I never went back. That was like 2014, I think, when I went. Um, and so, but back then there was not a whole lot out there.
Yeah.
It was just AA. I didn't know of anything else. I found this one little website and a British women's website that was like weirdly, it was like not well designed, hard to navigate. So there was nothing. And then I found Annie Grace in probably 2018, maybe was when I found her book. And that is when I think things started moving towards not, Instagram started getting a lot bigger with influencers. And I think there was just like a growing trend towards sobriety. And then also a growing trend towards people just like sharing more openly about these things. And so now there is so much out there, not only in terms of the health problems with alcohol and the wellness industry going alcohol free for just other reasons, but also lots of people talking about it personally. And so I joined the Luckiest Club membership in 2020, which is a group founded by Laura McCowan, who was one of the first people I started following on Instagram and who is a beautiful writer, a huge community now. But outside of Luckiest Club, you have like, there's like Sober Sis community,
Hmm.
there's a whole bunch of other ones that I'm Sober Mom Life. There's a whole bunch of other ones out there that you can join that might be right for you. And so I would say like joining one of those groups is like so important. It was so pivotal for me in 2020. It was that was when I was really able to stay strong because I was like going to these meetings every day. And there were people there that were like, there was like a 65-year-old guy that's been sober 25 years. And then there was like a 22-year-old single mom who was not
Mm.
trying to get sober and couldn't do it. And everyone in between. And it just made me realize that like I wasn't special. And there were a lot of people that struggled from, from a struggle on a scale of 1 to 10 to from like 1 to 10. And I was in the middle of that. And it just normalized it for me and made me realize I wasn't alone and I could do it. And yeah, the group aspect was super important.
Okay, so we'll loop around back to the writing part of this a little bit with Freely Sober. Um, I think a I think an issue a lot of people run into in this like world of podcasting and writing and all this is like, oh, somebody else is already doing it. So, is there room for me? And I'm always like, yes, like there's room for you because like you have something, everybody has something to say. I know that also sounds cliche, but it's true. So, how do you decide like there's room for me at the table? I have something to say, and also the pressure of like, I do want this to be a little bit different than all the other like 900 books. I know how you've read like 900 books on this like sobriety culture
Yeah.
and movement. So like, yeah, how I guess the question is how do you make it your own?
Yeah, I have read so many books and I keep reading them. Like I keep finding more and I just can't get enough. I don't know why. I just love to read sobriety memoirs. This book is a little less of a memoir. It has memoir, but it's also um, very practical, I would say, and also a lot of sort of research and journalism, a little bit of reporting that went into it. So, I mean, I think for me, I saw a space, an opening because there were hardly any books out there about sobriety and faith
Hmm.
or sobriety for a Christian specifically. And I found the ones that were out there, and there was like two, and one was like more for men, and the other one I liked, but it was really more memoir. And so I was like, where's the more practical side of this? Like, I can't believe there's nothing because I would go to these meetings, which I loved and were so helpful, but something was missing for me. Like, for me, being a Christian is like number one in my life. And so to go to meetings where it felt very like um, talking about this stuff, but without incorporating God into it, just didn't fully resonate for me. And I was like, I need something else. And so since then I have been able to find like a good group of people that, sort of are on that pathway with me. And there's nothing wrong with those other groups, but I was like, well, there's not this, where is this book? I guess I'm going to write this book because I wanted this book. And so here it is. And so, um, in terms of I don't know, carving out a space, like I'm kind of like you in that I think that there is a space for everyone. And if you want to make a space, make a space. You just kind of have to go for it and not worry about the logistics of what's going to happen. And I also felt like, it's sort of like God was guiding me towards this. And so if he wanted to open up a pathway, he was going to. And so, but I'm still in that place right now where I'm like, well, what am I going to do next? And like, should I start a more formal community and all of that? And it's hard to know. I was just on a call with a friend earlier trying to figure out like, well, what's the next thing and how can this book be taken to the next level so people can hear about it more and be helped for a longer term, and where can we take this?
One of the things I always tell people with like podcasting and stuff like that is that if you are proud of the work you've done, you should not be embarrassed to shamelessly plug it and share it everywhere because I read some fact somewhere that like with podcasting like 90% of the work goes into the recording and the editing and the producing and hardly any work goes into the promoting. If you're a really famous person and you have that like natural built-in following, fine. Maybe you don't have to promote it very much, but for most people, you really got to hustle. And so this question is really for the people listening who might be on a similar path to writing a book or something like that. Um, what are the different avenues that you are trying really hard to push this book out to? And is there anything like different you've done this time around to make sure you're getting more book sales?
Yeah, I mean, marketing is like it's a never ending. You can never do enough. You could just go all day forever and never do enough. And so it's a little overwhelming, especially today. I've been all over the place trying to do as much as I can. I would say I've approached this differently in that I have really focused on sending out a lot of emails, which people don't love, but that's part of marketing. And I've done a lot of guest writing on other people's Substacks. And I am really just sort of being shameless about like reaching out to my communities and just saying, hey, it's like some people, it's the book is for them. Other people, depending on who I'm talking to, maybe I'm like, hey, I'm an author, like we're fellow authors, like, can you
Yeah.
support this book for that reason? Or maybe you know someone, or I'd also like to see this book inside of churches for like women's ministries, libraries, and things like that. So there are so many reasons to do it. And so I'm trying to really like as each audience I talk to has a little bit of a different message, but I don't want to miss anyone. And I also, again, like you said, people need to see something so many times. Don't ever think that they've seen it because you can send, like, I know this from launching courses in my writing. Like, sometimes people at the end, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize this was launching. I missed it. I'm like, I sent like an email every day. Like, how did you miss it? But it happens. And so you just kind of have to do that and you lose subscribers and things like that.
I
But
know.
the day, like, it's what you have to do. And I'm feeling like I'm being diligent and just doing what I'm supposed to do and doing what I need to do to get the word out.
Yeah. Do you think that this book has a place for, let's just use me as an example, someone who doesn't want to be totally alcohol free, but uh, is pretty like minimal in their drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think so because I never say in the book like that the goal is for you to quit drinking. I know it has sober in the title. That's kind of like, well, that's a marketing thing for sure. But my premise is that at the end by the end of this book, you'll never think about alcohol in the same way again. And so the goal is not, okay, you're going to be pressured into quit drinking. The goal is like you're going to be more thoughtful. You're asking good questions. You're thinking deeply about why you want to do something or not do something, how you're using alcohol in a healthy or unhealthy way. And so maybe at the end of that, you're not the kind of person that really needs to fully give it up. I'm sure there are people that are like that. Maybe you are the kind of person, but I think once you know something, you can't unknow it. And so I think you walk away from reading this book being like, I can't continue on in the same exact way because I know all these new things. And it's transformative in terms of your mindset and how you think about it. So I think that it would be helpful for anyone that has ever had any question about their relationship with alcohol. Not that you're like, I'm an alcoholic, but like, am I using this in the best way possible? And where was I going with that? I had another comment. But yeah, so I think it's really just it's a thought exercise if nothing else, but I really hope that it's practical and there's a lot of great assessment questions, a lot of like prompts to think about for yourself. And so I really want people to just like have a notebook and be writing it down and thinking it through and actually just like if you have not ever thought about alcohol in your life, then maybe the book is not for you. But like if you've ever once questioned anything about it, like then it's for you because
Yeah.
know,
Well, yeah,
you
and I'm
have.
thinking, yeah, I'm just thinking like even if it isn't an issue in your life, like just still reading it can help you understand maybe other people in your life that it has been an
Oh,
issue.
yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think if you want to understand someone who has an issue,
Yeah.
I do get questions sometimes from friends and family members. How to deal with that is a big one. And then also I think it is like I mentioned, churches. I want churches to have it because the thing is like churches aren't talking about this very much. and you want to have a resource. If someone actually does come to you and is like, I'm struggling
Mm.
with this, you can just be like, you can have some guidance on how to talk to them and also have a resource to give them right away. And I think that's really important for a lot of topics, not just this one, but all kinds of issues that people in your church are struggling with.
I think one of the things that I've heard in this sober community over the years that has spoken to me a lot, sober sis, Jen, that's her name. Yeah.
Jen, yep, she endorsed the book.
Oh, she's great. Yeah, is the brain space it takes up. Like, um, I don't over drink. Like, I never get drunk, but like, I do very much think like, okay, if I'm gonna have a drink today, I need to have the drink by 5 because I need to be done drinking by 7 so that I can sleep all night long. You know what I mean? Like, I am so calculated with it. So I think, I don't know how many other people feel like that, but I think for me, that's one of my biggest frustrations is that like why am I even like thinking about this? Why do I even have to think like, okay, well, if I'm not home by this time, then I'm not having a drink. But I do. It does take up my brain space, and maybe that feels a little embarrassing to admit, but it's true.
Well, I think, and you have to decide like, do you want to have that brain space taken up? For
No,
me,
I don't.
well, for me, it was like, yes, that took up my brain space, but it was also like sometimes it would be like, there's always this question of is it going to go too far? And like, am I going to lose the real capacity to make a good decision? Like, am I going to say I'm going to have 2 glasses of wine, but then I want more and then I have more and then I like ruin my whole plan because I don't care after I had 2 glasses of wine, which on an empty stomach is a lot would be quite a bit for me. And so there's always that question of like what could happen for people, other people that maybe, struggle more than you would. And so there was that. And like nothing horrific has happened to me, but even my kids were really little then, they were 2 and 4 and younger. And it was always like, if anything ever happened to my kid,
Mm,
that maybe could have been related to me not paying enough attention because I was drinking, I would never forgive myself ever for the rest of my life. Even if you couldn't prove that it was because of that,
right.
or if you couldn't say, well, that wasn't your fault, that could have happened to anybody. I don't care. I would blame myself for the rest of my life. And, of the many reasons, of the many things that went into me deciding this wasn't worth it, that was one of them. Because I was like, I couldn't live with myself if something happened to my kids because I don't know, who knows what happens. And so that was also something that was there. And but yeah, the mental side of it, I don't think about it at all. It doesn't even cross my mind. I can see alcohol, I can be right there and I notice it. It's not like it's like I know I'm thinking it's Diet Coke. I notice it. And there is a randomly sometimes a moment where I'll be like, I could just take a swig of that, and like nobody would ever know. But I know where that would lead. It scares me where that would lead, honestly, because I'm like, I would do it once and then I would justify it again like 2 weeks later, and it would just slowly snowball into going back to what I was. And then I don't know, the thought of that really freaks me out that I would even get back to that place.
Okay, Hannah wants to know what do you wish churches knew did better regarding people who are struggling in this area?
I just wish churches would open up the opportunity. Like I want them to occasionally or maybe consistently be saying in the congregation whether it's like announcements or emails or whatever it is to communicate like, hey, we know that people of all kinds struggle with this, and so if that's something that you want to talk through or you want to talk about, like, here's an opportunity to do that. Because if I'm a person in church and I'm struggling with that, I'm not going to just go tell somebody. But if they specifically are like,
Hmm.
yeah, we worked with people, it's okay to talk about this and we're not going to pressure you. I think I would have taken that opportunity because I would have been like, oh, okay, okay. So this is like, it's safe to talk about this. And so I just awareness, I think, because again, like no one would ever look at me and be like, she has a huge drinking problem. And no one would ever know that. And so you don't know who's struggling because they're doing it at home, they're doing it alone, they're not showing you. And so it could be someone that you completely would never expect. So yeah, I shall.
Yeah, and oh, Shelby's here, our other
Oh,
sister.
sister.
I'm assuming too that That question could really depend on the answer to that question could really depend on the size of the church, right? And like their capacities and how much they can do. Like one of these big churches, like they have so many things they
No,
can
but
do.
maybe, but I think it's also like I go to a really small church and I think you just like any other issue that someone would have, like you open that up to like maybe you say it in a list of other things. Like if you're struggling with this, that, or the other thing, like we are open to talking with you about this, like in a ministerial way. So I think that's it. And also, I think pastors and ministry teams or whatever need to know that like if your church member comes to you with a problem like this, like yes, you can refer them to the local AA meeting, but like there has to be more. It's not just like a physical problem, it's really a spiritual problem. And so not that you have to like dedicate your whole life to it, but like where can you create the opportunity to like walk with people in a way that's consistent so they don't feel alone? And I think we are doing that a little bit at my church. We might be starting a Celebrate Recovery that I'm co-leading. Of course,
Yay.
as of
That's
this week,
good.
we talked about it. So we'll see. But I think pastors just need to be aware and understand that like a one-time reference to AA is not going to be enough to get people what they need.
Yeah. Like in the perfect world, would there be like some universal AA situation in the Christian church?
Well, Celebrate Recovery is kind of like that.
Okay.
But they don't have them everywhere. They're kind of sporadic. A lot of times they are in bigger churches. So there's that. But also just, you know, being able to connect the right people, like even just being in a small group at church, like just having people that you can be honest with, like that's the most important thing. So it doesn't have to be officially in that, but like, my pastor mentioned somebody to me the other day, and like now I know that that person is somebody to pray for and maybe somebody that I'll connect with. But just like, yeah, keeping your antenna up for the right connections to make too.
Okay, and if anybody else has questions, put them in the question box and I will relay them to Erica while we're wrapping up here. Sarah K says, "Yay for Celebrate Recovery. My hubby and I loved our time in the group." Erica, is there anything about Freely Sober that people might not know that you want to make sure you share with this group?
Um, here it is. I would say it is more like I was saying, practical than you may expect. Every chapter has reflection questions at the end. So I have some assessments in here to sort of like give yourself an assessment on where you are and how you got here. And even just like, I've read a lot of like when I've read financial books in the past, for example, like they always have like, what's your financial history? Like going back to like, how did your parents talk about money when you were 5 years old? And stuff like that just sort of helps you understand yourself better and gives you a more clear vision of like how you got here and where you want to go. And so I think some of that stuff is going to be really, really helpful and almost like a workbook. I mean, it's not a workbook, but it's kind of like that. So it's not just reading, it's also like taking action for yourself so that at the end of the day, like you are going to have a fresh perspective not only on alcohol but on your own self and your relationship with alcohol in a way that you're going to be equipped to do something different if you want to.
Okay, what's one thing we can all do today to help support your launch? I already bought my fourth copy,
I know.
so
You guys know, buy a copy. That's the big one for today, and this week. But otherwise, I would just say, just like natural, organically sharing. Like if you think of someone that might like it, send them a text with the link or order it for someone and send it to them. Getting it for your church ministry, like just keeping it in mind is just really, really helpful. If the topic comes up and somebody's talking about it naturally in conversation, oh, you should read this book that just came out. This would be a good one. So just stuff like that. And if you feel if you did get a copy and once you read it, like please leave an Amazon and a Goodreads review. That's super, super helpful. So just like kind of try to take those actions. If you're watching this, I really appreciate it and it just goes a long way.
all right, friends. Well, this was awesome. I can't wait to get my coffee. I should have taken one from mom and dad's house when we were there for Christmas because they had a bunch and mine haven't arrived yet, but I'm excited to read it.
Yes, thanks to my parents for always being so supportive and buying a lot of copies of my books, even though they're just sitting there now.
Thanks
All right. Thank
everybody
you
for
guys.
joining.
Bye.